The Dharma, incomparably profound and infinitely subtle, is always encountered yet rarely perceived. Now we see, hear, receive and maintain this. May we all realize that the Tathagata's true meaning, the Dharma, incomparably profound and infinitely subtle, is always encountered yet rarely perceived. Now we see, hear, receive and maintain this. May we all realize that the Tathagata's true meaning, the Dharma, incomparably profound and infinitely subtle, is always encountered yet rarely perceived. Now we see, hear, receive and maintain this. May we all realize the Tathagata's true meaning. So, here we are in Bray on a blustery day with the daffodils on the altar, which Jay found somewhere. Where'd you find those, Jay?
Just on the main street in Bray.
Lovely.
They weren't picked from anyone's garden.
What godforsaken hour we had looking for daffodils.
There's a few up now, but they were legally purchased.
I'm sure they were. Well done, well done. Lovely to see them. It really is lovely to, isn't it? After that winter, that winter we've had, and they're still having. To see those daffodils appear and to see that light change, and you can see it coming into the room sometimes during Zazen, to feel that freshening of the breeze and that spring approaching. And it's a lovely room to practice in, a great day to practice the Dharma. So the Zen tradition is what I'm going to talk about today, and we might have a problem straight off because I want to give a good talk and you're expecting a good talk. So don't expect a good talk. Just set aside your expectations, just, and I'll try and do the same, and we'll see what happens. What is Zen? Zen, well, I suppose I'm talking to a group of people that I've just met, so some of you will be very familiar with what Zen is and some of you will not be. So I'll presume the latter, which is probably safer, because we're all perpetually beginners anyway. Every time we sit on the zafu, it's for the first time. Zen means meditation. That's what it means. The word comes from Chan in China, before that in India, Dhyana. My pronunciation might not be spot on there, but that's what the word means, and it means meditation. So the Zen school is the meditation school of Buddhism. That means we put the emphasis on Zazen, on seated meditation. Other schools have different emphasis in their practice. For example, Nichiren Buddhists would chant the title of the Lotus Sutra, and Pure Land Buddhists would have a similar chant, Nembutsu, that practice. Shingon Buddhists you see having the fire ceremony, very ceremonial. But Zen, Master Dogen, the founder of Soto Zen, the type of Zen that I practice, said basically you can dispense with everything, really, except for meditation. That's the core. And in one of his early works, Master Dogen, who lived in the 13th century in Japan, said you can get rid of chanting, you can get rid of offering incense, you can get rid of bowing, you can get rid of all this, just sit zazen. And then he continues to bow and offer incense and chant and everything else. And everything else which creates the container for the teachings, you know, that has allowed them to be passed on for all these years. The dance, that is, are the forms and rituals of Zen that contain teachings themselves. So Zen is primarily about Zazen, sitting meditation. And it's often, there's a huge amount of debate about, is Zen a religion, is it a philosophy, you know, what is it? Zen is just whatever it is in the moment it is Zen. So, people say Zen has no doctrine, no set of beliefs. Kind of, but kind of not. You know? Zen is full of apparent contradictions. And so is our life. Each one of you is totally independent and interdependent at the same time. You are your own woman, you're your own man. So, if I say you're independent, that's true, but it's also not true. And if I say you're interdependent, it's true and it's also not true. So Zen itself is full of these kind of non-dualistic understandings of reality. Because reality is not dualistic. Reality is beyond the dualistic. So I am both independent and independent. So Zen is a slippery little fish, really. It's hard to grasp, and that's why the stories, the koans of Zen, are full of these contradictions that are trying to point towards this non-dualistic reality. You know, it is true to say that there's no doctrine, no set of beliefs that you have to believe in. It's primarily a practice. Zen is primarily a practice, and that's why people who are Buddhists sit Zazen, people who are Christians sit Zazen, people who are atheists sit Zazen. So Zen isn't interested in you signing up to a set of beliefs. Zen is just about you practicing Zen. It's experiential rather than doctrinal. So, you sit Zazen, that's it. Now, to say there aren't beliefs and doctrines associated with Zen, of course, would be totally reductive, because of course there are. But you're free to reject or take whatever meaning you make sense for you out of those, you know? But not only that, that would be like your ego shopping, going to the spiritual supermarket and saying, I'll take a bit of that and I'll take a bit of that. No. Endeavour also to put aside your own preferences, your own discriminations. You know? When I started practicing Zen, I didn't want to bow, I didn't want to do this, that, and this. I set that aside, and I found a beauty and teachings within these actions, you know? So, on the one hand, you don't have to sign up to any set of beliefs. On the other hand, set aside your own strong ego and just practice with the Sangha, with the group, you know? Now, is it Buddhism? Yes. Zen comes out of the Buddhist tradition. Shakyamuni Buddha, 2,500 years ago. Recent archaeological evidence says probably more, actually. They've done some digs at Bodhigaya. Has anyone read about this?
Yeah.
Did you read about that? Yeah.
Very interesting.
There's could be even an extra 500 years.
They were speculating that, some very old stupas, I think, or particular structures that were that couldn't have existed without Buddhism existing at the time.
And they've aged them, isn't that right?
Yeah, that's
Jay?
carbon dated, I think, back at least 300 years before they think he lived. So yeah.
So it's a very ancient spiritual tradition, starting in Nepal, India, to where those borders are now, around there. And we chanted in the meal chant during retreat. Buddha was born in Kapilavastu, enlightened in Magadha, taught at Varanasi, entered Nirvana at Kushinagara. All these places are quite near to each other, you know. And so Shakyamuni Buddha is seeking awakening, to awaken to the truth of reality, to the way things really are, seeking enlightenment, and follows all those difficult practices, yogic practices really, and ascetic practices, more than yogic practices, actually ascetic practices of starving yourself and going through all this. And ultimately he realizes this is a waste of time, this is just going to end up in your own death. So very close to death, Shakyamuni Buddha takes food. A woman offers him food and he takes it. The ascetics he was practicing at reject him, say, oh, he's taken the soft option, he's got, you know, off he goes. And that's my stomach looking for food now as well. Won't be too long, promise. No ascetic practices for my stomach. But and he sits under the Bodhi tree for so many days and realizes his great awakening when he sees the morning star. This is the start of the tradition, and Shakyamuni has an insight into the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the fact that, not that life is suffering, but that there is suffering in life, undeniably, you know. We don't get what we want. We don't get the things we want. Mick Jagger knew that. He can't get no satisfaction. So, you know, so you can't get no satisfaction.
Yeah.
You know, all the hopes and dreams that we had when we were young, many of them didn't happen. You know, the hopes and dreams we have now, many of them will not happen. The people we love will die. Our relationships will break up. You know, we won't get the jobs we want. We won't have the successes we want, and we will have failures. We know all that. So it's not that there aren't brilliant and beautiful and joyous things in life. Of course there are. Our life is full of blessings that we didn't expect. But we cannot deny that there is suffering. And that there's a cause of suffering. Shakyamuni says this is trying to grab on to, crave after, desire things to be the way that we want them to be. But the good news is there's also a remedy, and the remedy is the Eightfold Path of Buddhism. So all that, this is not what I'm really here to talk about today. This is the beginnings of Buddhism, the Theravadan tradition, which you can read about and study in the Pali Canon. And a whole monastic culture emerged around Shakyamuni Buddha after his awakening. And the ideal was the arhat, the individual who achieved their own enlightenment through severe effort. They got rid of the three poisons in their life of greed, hate and delusion. And then later on, centuries later, a new vision in Buddhism emerges called the Mahayana. And this Mahayana is the great vehicle. And this is that we should seek not only our own salvation, enlightenment and awakening, escape from suffering, but we should wish the same for all sentient beings, and we should work on their behalf. And this is the Bodhisattva ideal, which grows up in later Buddhism, the Mahayana. And this is the school that Zen belongs to, and the Tibetan traditions as well, the four main schools of Tibetan Buddhism, and Nichiren Buddhism, Pure Land. But so Zen then, this Chan, this Zen meditation school, comes out of the Mahayana, which emerges in India. And really the foundations for what becomes Zen is already laid in India. Just as Buddhism emerges out of this Hindu Vedic culture, Chan and Zen emerges out of this Indian Buddhism. So, in the monasteries of what we think of India today, India, Nepal, but Kashmir, Pakistan, Afghanistan, all this area, Buddhism is all over here. And there are monasteries here full of philosophers who are thinking about what Shakyamuni's original teachings were, the meanings. And a number of understandings emerge over the centuries, and a number of new sutras emerge, like the Prajna Paramita Sutras, the sutras that talk about the perfection of wisdom, the wisdom that goes beyond wisdom. And this is central to the understanding of reality that is in Zen. This Prajna Paramita, this wisdom beyond wisdom. There is a wisdom beyond our intellect, beyond language, and beyond even our understanding. And Nagarjuna, one of the great philosophers of the Mahayana, comes up with this idea of of really the middle way. He develops the idea of the middle way, the Madhyamaka, and this is that he develops the idea that all reality is empty of substantial existence. So, it's not that things do not exist, they do exist, but they don't exist independently and on their own. The unfortunate translation for that sunyata idea is emptiness, which is a very negative sounding thing in English. But really, the meaning is not about emptiness. It could as easily be translated as fullness or boundlessness. So, for Nagarjuna and for the Madhyamaka, there are two truths. There is the relative truth of your ordinary life, here, the floor, cups and saucers, tables, chairs, the wind, trees, your body, relative truth, truth of the world, and ultimate, absolute truth, where everything is empty of individual existence, that everything is relying on everything else. And for Nagarjuna, he doesn't settle on one, he's constantly navigating between the two. Sound familiar? Like I was talking about a few minutes ago, this, you're independent, you're interdependent. The reality, the truth is much bigger than me saying one or the other. You know? Than even what I can say. And later on, this idea, this other philosophy emerges: the Yogacara, the Yogacara, the Yogashara, and this is the idea that all is mind, that everything, in some sense, is mind. And this is a very important idea in Buddhism as well, in Zen particularly. Very difficult to understand idea. But certainly, if we just emphasize mind, the way you can perceive things creates the way they are. I think we know that in our own lives in a really easy and simple way, which is also very profound, of course. So, did you ever see anyone, maybe some people in this room have suffered from depression or known people who've suffered from depression, you know? And you see that they're in a situation, maybe they're in a comfortable situation with a good job, they should be, you know, have everything, they should be happy, but they're not. You know? And then maybe they recover from their depression and maybe nothing has really changed, but they're not depressed. You know? That if there's a hair of a difference, everything is different. You know? But the Yogacara also was trying to describe phenomenal reality and what it means, you know, and what's reality made of, and how do we perceive it. So these are some of the ideas that inform Zen as it emerges, and this idea of interpenetration. Everything relies on everything else, you know. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Zen teacher in the Vietnamese tradition, has a lovely book on the Heart Sutra, which we're going to chant at the end of today. Lovely book called The Heart of Understanding. And at the beginning of the book, Thich Nhat Hanh says, the page you're reading now, when you're reading this book, well, someone made the paper, and it was made out of trees, and the sun shone to make those trees grow, and the rain, allowed the trees to grow. Someone cut the trees and made it into paper. Someone transported it. I wrote these words. Someone made the pen and paper that I'm writing on. Someone distributed the book. Someone fed me when I was a child that allowed me to be here. Everything is entirely interpenetrating. Everything. We're still being nourished by the meals that our great-great-grandmother made. And this interpenetration is good news. And it's good news because everything you do matters. Everything you do matters. You are told and led to believe, we are all told and led to believe that everything we do does not matter, that we are powerless and insignificant. We're not on television, we're not rich, we're not famous, we're not in charge of some big organization or company. We vote for something, and politicians go off and do whatever they want anyway. Mm-hmm. You know? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we are everything about contemporary life, particularly, but not only. If you were around in the medieval times, you would feel powerless too. So everything is telling us all the time that we are insignificant and powerless, but this is wrong. The good news is everything we do actually matters. Everything. Where you put your tea bag, in the bin or in the compost, it matters. So, this is the vision of interpenetration in our personal lives. So these foundations, these philosophical foundations of the Mahayana, come to China, where they get a Taoist flavor. You know Taoism, that spiritual tradition. So it starts, very close to nature, very informed by nature. So Chan, this emphasis on meditation, is brought by the Indian monk Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma is the first patriarch, and he brings this meditation school from India to China. And it's golden eras in China, where many of the stories and flavour of Zen comes from, in its contact with Chinese culture and Taoism. And from there, it goes to Japan. And there are 5 schools of Zen in China of Chan, and the Soto Zen way, which is the way I follow, is brought by Dogen, who in the 1200s goes to China from Japan. He's a Japanese monk, spends a number of years in China, has a great awakening, and brings Soto Zen back to Japan. And in 1227 he writes his first real important text, the Fugan Zazenkai, where he recommends Zazen to everybody. This is not just for monks and nuns, this is for everybody. This is whether you're male or female, whether you're a farmer or city folk, whether you're smart or not so smart, rich or poor, whatever. In fact, Soto Zen in Japan is still called Farmer Zen, because it's the Rinzai school that the samurai practiced, So the much more popular Zen of the people was Soto Zen, So, so Zen is really about meditation, and it's particularly about practicing shikantaza, just sitting. And just sitting itself is enlightenment, says Master Dogen. There's no separation between practice and enlightenment. To sit is to be enlightened. To sit zazen is itself enlightenment. Mightn't feel like it at times, but this is Master Dogen. But there's no separation between enlightenment and sitting zazen. That there is no there isn't a gradual journey towards great enlightenment. That enlightenment is available now, right now. I mean, how can some other version of me in the future be enlightened? This is it. This is the reality. The siren going off, the bird singing, the wind blowing, this is reality. Suchness. This is such as it is. Nothing is hidden. This is reality. But if there's a hair's breadth of difference in perception, this is not reality. Like our depression analogy earlier. So we sit and we sit and we sit and we sit, and sometimes we have this wow, amazing. People call that kensho, or enlightenment, or kensho. Satori. Boom! It's like the brightest idea you ever had. Oh my God! Sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. Who cares? Doesn't matter. This is it anyway. This is it anyway. Whether you have Satori or Kensho or not, doesn't matter. In Rinzai Zen, Satori is emphasized very much. In Soto Zen, the way I follow, Kensho, Smensho. So, doesn't matter. Just sit zazen. So, if we were to desire some enlightenment in the future, we would be hankering after something and desiring something that we don't have. We already have it. The Tagada Garba is the teaching here. The idea that you already have Buddha nature. It just has to reveal itself. In the Lotus Sutra, the image is of a jewel that's all muddy and dirty. Still a jewel, but it has to be polished up to sparkle and shine with its great inner luminosity. Same for us. We have to sit zazen, we have to practice. We are the jewel anyway, but we still have to practice. We still have to cut the jewel and polish it. The Tagadagarbha teachings, which are also central to Zen, that we have Buddha nature. So, we're not seeking after some future enlightenment. We're just sitting with no expectations, with no discriminations, opening ourselves to the way things are. What a relief. We don't have to try anymore. Give up trying. Stop trying. Stop searching. You're here. This is it. Or not. The hair's breadth of difference in the perception. So we have to practice. We have to practice. This was the great conundrum for Dogen. If we have Buddha nature already, why do we have to sit zazen and practice? You know, we have Buddha nature already. Isn't job done? Let's go to the bar. You know? So, no. We still have to practice for it to manifest. So this is the understanding. Kodo Sawaki, the great 20th century Zen teacher, put this idea central to his teachings, that don't look for even enlightenment. Just practice. Don't seek anything. Sit, open yourself, open your heart, release. Those burdens we've all been carrying around with us all our lives, maybe for many lifetimes, just lay them down. It's very hard. It sounds simple, very difficult. Free yourself. In Zen, you do the work yourself. No guru, no teacher. No one can do it for you. You can work with a teacher, but it's your path. In fact, we should work with a teacher because we are so easily deluded in our own practice. That's why we support each other. So, release. We've learned over so long to close down and hide and protect ourselves for very good reasons. But without opening yourself up to damage, without opening yourself up to being hurt or violated, still can open up. Still can release. The flower is the central image in the Zen tradition. So we open up with the flower. The Zen tradition starts when Buddha is teaching, picks up a flower, and he holds it up. He says nothing. Says nothing. There are many people present, and one person smiles. Mahakashyapa sees the flower and he smiles. This is called the flower sermon. Wordless teaching. There's the flower. What's the teaching? What is taught? What is transmitted by those flowers? What are they teaching us? Now, throw away the question and throw away any intellectual response. They're there. Thank you for listening to my ramblings. So let's do a few short minutes of keening and then it'll be lunchtime. Oh, close the sutra, sorry. Stick with tradition. Now, may the merits of these teachings penetrate into each thing in all places, so that we and every sentient being together may realize the Buddha way. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, Mahaprajna,